Let's welcome the founder and CEO of GSV, Mr. Michael Mo.
Ni hao. It's an honor to be here. What a great event, getting all these leaders and ideas here in Beijing. It's been an incredible couple of days. I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to speak this afternoon. So, about 5 years ago, we wrote a white paper called 2020 Vision, and what this really was about was providing this game plan to achieve our primary goal at GSV, which is how can we ensure that everybody has an equal opportunity to participate in the future. And that's really driven by the foundation of access to education. Our vision is that talent is basically equally distributed around the world, but opportunity is not. So how do we change that dynamics to give everybody an equal opportunity to participate in the future? So 10 years ago, we started the ASU GSV Summit, we started GSV. And Bill Gates famously said, most people overestimate what they can do 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And if you look what's happened in the last 10 years in the education innovation area and the amount of capital that's been deployed and the companies that have been launched, it's really pretty remarkable. So in 2010, there was $700 billion of venture capital in the education technology space. Last year, that grew tenfold to $7 billion. If you look at China, the funding of Chinese education technology companies is up 48x in the last 10 years. The number of companies founded in the US in education technologies has tripled in the past 10 years. And in China, it's up amazing 19-fold, which is you just, these ideas are flourishing to solve this big, hairy, audacious objective of giving everybody an equal opportunity to participate in the future. We've seen 8 unicorns created in the education technology field, and 3 of the largest 10 market cap education companies are based in China, with TAL and New Oriental being the number 1 and number 2 largest education companies in the world. When you look at this shift that's taken place in what we call the global Silicon Valley, in 2010, 92% of all venture capital was in the United States. And most of that was in Silicon Valley, where I live and work. If you look at this year, 45% of venture capital is in the United States, 55% is outside the United States, and we all know what's going on in China in terms of the activity. So that it's really quite remarkable, the shift that has occurred over the past 10 years. We believe in a global marketplace, a knowledge-based economy. What you know, your education makes the difference, not only for an individual, but for a company, and for that matter, a country. So this is the most recent PISA rankings of school systems. Green says that's good, yellow is a warning, and red is you're in trouble. And you can see, where the great education system, that is going to be an indicator of where future opportunity is going to be created in this knowledge economy. You look at global universities, it's pretty amazing the shift that's taken place. So just 29 of the top universities in the world are now in the United States, with China having 11 of the top universities. And again, this has all happened in the last 10 years, where you've seen a pretty dramatic shift take place. When you look at how much things have changed over time, it's pretty amazing. So 500 years ago, basically you lived and you died within 5 miles of where you were born. Effectively, your parents' past equaled your future. So if you were from royalty, you stayed in royalty. If you were a farmer, if your dad was a farmer, you became a farmer. That was your life. And then 500 years ago, the Gutenberg, this tidal wave of innovation occurred, really connecting the world, making it a smaller place, and creating more interaction. First with the Gutenberg press in 1439. Then you had the steamboat in 1756. 1804, you had the locomotive train. 1876, you had the telephone again, making the world a smaller place. The automobile in 1886, and then 1903, you had Wilbur and Orville Wright inventing the commercial airplane. Then over the last 50 years, you've had this explosion of innovation that's taken place with the information age, globalization, internet and mobile. In 1980, it was the PC that, again, made this revolution that happened in terms of information and the power of what it gave people. Companies like Apple, Microsoft, Dell, and Intel were the leaders of that era. With the fall of the wall in Berlin in 1990, you had this unleashing of globalization. We're in a rising middle class. So in 1990, you had 1 billion people that were in the middle class. Today, it's 3.2 billion people in the middle class. So just in 30 years, you've seen a tripling of the number of people in the middle class. Now, the 2000s was the era of the internet. Basically, the world truly became flat with every corner of Earth available to you with one click. And then now, in the 2010s, it's really about the era of mobile computing. So not only is every corner of the Earth available with one click, you also can do it on the fly. We're going through a period today where technology power is exponential, and yet human capabilities is linear. And we're at that cross-section where pretty soon the technology is going to replace the technologist. So we have to reimagine what it looks like to be an educated person and to be a productive person in the environment that we're in today. So, over the last, since time, you've seen this explosion. We are definitely overall healthier, wealthier, and wiser, but the future is not equally distributed. And that's an issue. We're in what I call a winner-take-all economy, where disproportionate gains are going to fewer and fewer people. That's evidenced by the fact that 10% of the world's population controls 90% of its wealth. Look at even more kind of scary statistic. The 8 richest people in the world have as much wealth as the bottom half of the population on planet Earth. CEO compensation has exploded. 50 years ago, an average CEO made 23 times the average worker. Today, that's gone up to 361 times. So this winner-take-all economy is showing itself in a variety of different ways. So effectively, we've come full circle in the last 500 years. Your future is determined by how well you select your parents. And people understand that that's fundamentally unfair, and that's not sustainable, right? And so Aristotle famously said, inequality is the parent of revolution. And unless we fix this, unless we figure out a way to make a fairer system, a more equal system, and give everybody the opportunity to participate in the future, I believe you really are at a breaking point. Looking at higher education is an interesting place to see kind of how things need to be reimagined. Because today, in the United States, 70% of all higher ed students are quote-unquote non-traditional. So what's a traditional college student? You're 18 to 22 years old. You go to school full-time during the day. That's what a traditional college student is. Well, 70% of the college students today don't fit that label. But college and universities are set up for 18 to 22-year-olds. Classes during the day, semesters, classes offered on a semester basis. Dormitory, football team, marching band, all relevant for 70% of that student population. Looking at what the growth that's projected for higher education in the next 10 years is to go from 220 million students to 440 million students, so it's basically doubling. And so imagining what does this new student need to participate in the future? What kind of education? And a lot of that's going to be created online. So Albert Einstein said, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. And when I bring this up, it's because we have to also think about how individuals are able to be taught the way they best learn. They're able to pursue interests that are most aligned with their potential. So this imagination that needs to take place of how to achieve this goal of having everybody have the equal opportunity to participate in the future, I think is fundamental in terms of the question that we're addressing, and how education technology is really the core, the foundation of that. So another core fundamental and a change is this idea of lifelong learning. So when we talk about lifelong learning, it'd be like if you ask somebody if they were fit And they said, yeah, I ran a marathon in 1980. Well, that, of course, is ridiculous. The same is going to be true for somebody in education. If you say, are you an educated person? If you're not learning all the time, on an ongoing basis, you're going to be left behind. And look at what technology has taken away 50% of all jobs that currently exist, estimated by McKinsey. So what is reimagined in terms of the foundation, the fundamentals of this future we're going into? One is reimagine a new curriculum. I call the 7 C's. So sure, STEM and STEAM and is all important in terms of modern competencies, but I think these 7 C's are really the foundation of what students need to know to be successful. And those 7 C's are 1, critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, communication, and that's whether it's speaking or whether it's communicating using technology in your chat or a PowerPoint, but it's communication. Cultural fluency. Again, the world is becoming more and more connected, and understanding other cultures and understand their values is going to be fundamental what an educated person is. Civic engagement, collaboration. These are all foundational skills, and then also character. So those are the 7 C's, what I think are the foundation of a modern curriculum. So our 2020 vision outlined specific steps besides a modern curriculum, really 10 themes that we focus on that we think are core to the future and how we give everybody an equal opportunity to participate in the future. So first theme is early childhood is a fundamental. And why that's so important, that basically 85% of the brain development happens before age 5, but 95% of the investment is after age 5. And we know that $1 invested in pre-K creates a $7 return. Second theme we call invisible learning. And this is the idea that you're learning without even really focusing on the fact that you're learning something. We think a way that that's going to happen is through games, for example. There's now 2.6 billion gamers, up from 100 million in 1995. And an emerging trend is eSports. And again, we think eSports is another way that people are going to obtain knowledge in a natural, fluent way. Third, just for me learning. This is the idea that you have adaptive technology, creating personalized learning, just basically using the kind of adaptive technology that we see with an Amazon or a Netflix or a Spotify, combined with the diagnostic technology we see with an IBM or 23andMe, get together all in a personalized learning experience. Fourth, knowledge is a currency. What we talk about here is while the college diploma is going to be, has been and will continue to be a core part of how people represent their capabilities, their knowledge, their accomplishments, that's going to be augmented by other ways that people both acquire knowledge and how they represent knowledge for future opportunity. We say it's not about knowledge, it's not about college, it's about knowledge. It's not where you go, it's what you know. And increasingly what people are going to be able to create is their own knowledge portfolio. Imagine like a playlist that you see for a Spotify. Degreed is a company that participates in this trend, basically creating knowledge maps for large corporations around the world. Randall Stevenson, the CEO of AT&T, said there's a need to retool yourself, and you should not expect to stop. People who do not spend 5 to 10 hours a week on online learning will obsolete themselves. That's a pretty powerful statement. Fifth theme is Harvard meets Hollywood, and what we mean by this is borrowing some of the techniques that Hollywood does to basically create engagement and new models and leveraging up content. We're seeing a lot of different innovative education technology models that participate in that theme. And so I've said that more people have learned American history from the musical Hamilton than they have from the textbooks. And I think that's basically almost true. An example of this is a company called Masterclass, which basically takes superstars in their areas of subject expertise, creating online courses. And again, we're seeing a number of interesting examples of this happen. English as a world language is a megatrend. The fact that I'm standing up here speaking in English, and by the way, embarrassed that I can't speak any other language other than be able to say ni hao. The fact of the matter is, I'm lucky that English is becoming the global language that people are communicating. So we say the race is over. English has won. You're seeing a lot of successful companies playing to this megatrend. VIP Kid being a great example of that. Seventh mega theme, that we focused on is we call it mind, body, and soul. And this is the whole integration of different ways that people are going to acquire skills and knowledge and talents. That's not just what you put in your brain, it's the whole overall experience. A company called Headspace is an example of this theme in terms of how we think about it. Platforms, increasingly you're seeing these great education platforms being built, much like we see with a Tencent or a Facebook, is creating real platforms, and then the apps that are created on these platforms. So like, what Netflix and Spotify's been able to do. This is Andrew Grauer, who's the CEO of Course Hero, which is a peer-to-peer learning platform, on-demand tutoring, doing extremely well, and a great example. Ninth mega theme is impact, and this is the idea that it's no longer is it just about the cash you're able to create. It's really about having other purpose and meaning to the work that you accomplish. And so what we believe in education technology, there's going to be a direct correlation between your ultimate impact, or what we call return on education, with the IRR. Example of a company like this is Coursera. Jeff Magicalda, who's the CEO of Coursera, is here. I don't know if he spoke yet or he's speaking later. But Coursera today has 46 million students on its platform, which is pretty remarkable. Looking at the growth in MOOCs, there's now 120 million students around the world taking classes on these massive open online course platforms. And a mega trend and a mega theme that's going to be integrated in almost everything that we're seeing is artificial intelligence and the impact that it's going to have both on the overall economy but also in the learning space. So one of the things that I like to point out, you look at autonomous vehicles, and you can say, are they going to happen faster or slower than what people think? I happen to think it's going to be faster, and one of the reasons why I think it's going to be faster is you're able to see that today there's 1.3 million car accidents, deaths every single year. So 1.3 million people die driving a car, and what's estimated that autonomous vehicles will eliminate 90% of those deaths. So the motivation to change, I think, is pretty compelling. If you look at in a classroom, if you have 3 bad teachers in a row, you're statistically dead. And so what does that mean for adopting technology, not to replace a teacher, but to enhance the learning experience and to create more consistency for it and with better outcomes? So Andrew Ng said that AI is the new electricity, and what I believe Andrew, who is, by the way, one of the co-founders of Coursera, what I believe he means by that is that it's going to be ubiquitous, it's going to be invisible, and it's going to be transformative. So AI and learning, we're seeing it in language learning, mathematics, science, and STEAM today. We're seeing it, personalization, K-12, college audit. Anti-plagiarism and attendance is another area that you're going to see it being utilized. Smart LMS, attendance monitoring. All these are areas that we're seeing startups, innovators, entrepreneurs adopting AI for part of the learning and education solution. So as I close up my talk with the last couple of minutes I have, and going back to the beginning where we said, our aspirational goal is to have everybody have an equal opportunity to participate in the future, with the foundation of that being education. And this other point that I talked about, of this inequality that's being created in the world that we're living today, and how that inequality is actually growing. And we think part of the way that that's going to be solved is giving everybody equal access to great education, and certainly technology is going to play an important hand. But you look what's going on in the world, you look at even how things like market forces are being challenged. If you look at today, millennials, 60% of millennials think that capitalism is a bad system. Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations and The Invisible Hand in 1776, really talking about this aligning of economic incentives and human behavior. Thomas Jefferson, in the same year, 1776, when he wrote the Declaration of Independence, talked about everybody having an equal opportunity to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. And then George Washington, in his inaugural address in 1789, talked about, and Adam Smith, when he talked about the motivations, is this invisible hand. This invisible hand kind of guided economic activity and people's activity. George Washington talked about a different type of invisible hand, And that was this invisible hand that people were seeking meaning and purpose, what he called providence in their activities. And so I believe that Adam Smith's invisible hand is broken. And I think the way that you fix it is through marrying it with George Washington's invisible hand. And that's what we think is an opportunity as it relates to this overall kind of motivation and system that we're in. So we know that education is life's original accelerator, and we think that through education, you get meaning through learning and purpose through work. And so we call this the health of nations and the new invisible hand, which is what I think is a major factor of what you're going to see as we look forward. And so this aspirational goal of giving everybody an equal opportunity to participate in the future, people say that's just impossible. And I would just remind, never doubt a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. That's why conferences like GS are so valuable, to get a committed group of people together that are looking at making the world a better place and changing it for good. And I think the time has come. Victor Hugo said, nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. The education technology time has come. And so, again, I'm very delighted to be here. So glad that you're at GES. I'm so glad to be in Beijing. Thank you so much for your time.
感谢 Mr. Michael Mo 的精彩分享。Thank you for your insightful sharing, Mr. Michael Mo.